don't know how to describe Romelu Lukaku. 85 goals in 115 Belgium appearances. This makes him one of the best goal scorers in the history of football. Full stop. Only Cristiano Ronaldo for Portugal has more international goals than him in European competition. He's in a weird spot in his career because his performance against Slovakia in the Euros was a never-ending nightmare, similar to his game in the last World Cup, where Lukaku will miss chance after chance after chance against Croatia. With the game ending 0-0, Belgium will be knocked out of the World Cup in a group of Croatia, Morocco and Canada. And even after that Slovakia game, Lukaku's misfortune continued, where in a 0-0 draw against Ukraine, Belgium lacked any clinical edge, and Lukaku's inability to score was just obvious. However, how can this make any sense? He's literally the top goal scorer in all of the European qualifiers. Do you want to know how many goals he scored? 14. 14. Ronaldo got 10, Mbappe got 9, Harry Kane got 8. Fifth was Scott McTominay, which is remarkable, and Højlund, and that's number 5. He's got double the 5th top goal scorer. What is going on with Lukaku? So make sure to comment down below your thoughts about Lukaku. Also, like and subscribe, and Vizeh Designs for the best football prints, all made by myself. The link is at the top of the description. Use code Lukaku for 20% off all items. And let's get into it. And then of course there's Romania, where Lukaku once again found a net, celebrating, and then VAR determined offside for the slightest of margins. The third time that he had a goal chalked off by VAR. This isn't just anecdotal, but is backed by the stats. He holds the record at Euro 2024 for most big chances missed, for the most shots on target, which is 7, and the most disallowed goals. Obviously, with Belgium playing against France up next, I mean, it would only make sense that now he would actually show up and be a undeniably world-class striker, which he's meant to be. He did get signed for almost £100 million. The issue with Lukaku is not mentality in a negative way, but like clearly he needs to feel loved, he needs to feel confident, he needs to feel like himself. The ghost of that Croatia game has appeared to follow him. Even in his club football, he seems to ask more questions than he does answer. Lukaku currently playing his football at Roma. You may be surprised if I do say that he's there on loan. He is still currently at Chelsea. And in the Serie A this season, 13 goals, 32 appearances, and in the Europa League, some good stats, 7 goals in 13 games. Very, very solid. Lukaku scores goals. That's not a question. If we go back into his time at Chelsea, 8 goals in 26 games in the Premier League, when in the year prior he scored 24 goals in 36 appearances. He's a weird player, considering he did join Chelsea for £97.5 million and at the time said that he would only join any English club if it was Chelsea because of his time at Manchester United. Well, only a couple months later, he did an interview with Sky Italia and completely buried any relationship he could possibly have with any Chelsea fan. Halfway through the season, said that he would stay at Inter Milan if the club gave him a new contract, and that he would join Inter in a heartbeat, apologising to the fans, saying that he would never want to go. After a club has spent a lot of money, nearly 100 million quid to go on an interview halfway through the season, 6 months in, completely tearing apart your relationship with the fans is rather impressive. Let's play a game here. Type in the word Lukaku, because that's the current meme that's around right now. When he was at Chelsea and United, but predominantly Chelsea, he was one of the main memes around, which I think was quite harsh.
Lukaku! Lukaku!
The main critique about him would be he looks like he plays football wearing Timberland boots. And the thing is, there is always a certain goal that he always strives to do. This usually involves the ball being played out to him when he has space to run into, usually around 10-15 yards, in which he has this particular technique that he slows his feet down before he actually takes his shot. This always usually gives him a chance to amend an error that he may have made. If it is typically, if a defender manages to catch up to him, his massive frame, he's strong enough just to simply holds them off. This is the Lukaku goal. Out of the 60 goals that he scored for Belgium in competitive games, 10 are headers, 31 is with his left foot, and 19 is with his right foot. Lukaku is supposed to be one of the best strikers in the world. Supposed to be. He's good at something some of the biggest football clubs want, and yet when they acquire him, they are confused on how to really use him. At Chelsea, he was the 7th most expensive signing ever. Even now, he's at 10th. At a wage of 300 grand a week means limited clubs are really able to afford him. That's why he's still at the club now. And Euros gives him a big chance to really show himself what he can do. If I ask you which club is he most known for, I wouldn't be surprised if most of you say West Brom, or at least Everton. At a club like Inter Milan, which he obviously has made himself very fond of the club and he wants to be loved very much, yet his reputation suffered because he was open to a move to Juventus in 2023. After all the clubs and all the goals, he kinda doesn't really have a place that he can really call home. Lukaku is 31 years old and he's reaching a stage of his career where his pace is now going to start affecting him, and those in Belgium and potentially in Italy has accepted his gifts for what they are. A handful of inconsistencies has always remained that we saw at United and Chelsea, flaws that prevent him from ascending to that new goal scoring level, which is obviously still high level. The quality of his first touch remains mixed, to say the least. His finishing, erratic with a tendency to shoot off target or directly at the keeper in clear opportunities, and his movement both inside and around the box can be extremely stiff at times. There is an idea that he is better running the channels and working as a target man to hold up the ball with his chest and bring his team into the game. People have always accused Lukaku of being reliant on his physical gifts. Of course, he's a huge man. Trying to shove Lukaku off the ball, even for the most experienced of centre-halves, is stature will play a factor of that. This, of course, does make sense. Lukaku, I remember a really famous picture of a young Lukaku playing at academy level, and just looking at this makes me laugh, because what are you even meant to do in this situation? Imagine being on the other team and you're playing a match and you just see this absolute physical god on the other team, and you go to the centre half saying, "Hey kid, so you're marking him today." You would genuinely fall apart on the spot. He dominated, obviously, at academy levels, and even at the under-18s and under-21s it continued, because even despite him now facing adults or young adults, he was still beyond any of his peers physically, and he had pace, he had strength, and of course he is a good finisher, we cannot argue with that. However, now that those physical traits are starting to go now, and the agility and the balance is also going to play a factor with that stiffness, it's gonna be a tough situation for him in the next year or two. A smart thing found by The Athletic is that comparing the World Cup 2018 to Euro 2024, he's been clearly told to stay central. In 2018, he was found all over the pitch, touching the ball from the halfway line to just outside the 18-yard box, clearly being involved with playing things deeper. Comparing it to World Cup 2022, and he spent 45% of all his touches in the major tournament inside the central part of the box. 45%. There's 0% for outside the box in general. And this can also be seen for this tournament too, where almost 50% are found just outside the box, centrally or inside it. To hear the words of Lukaku here, I need to go into the Players Tribune essay that he put out back in 2018. He described his difficult childhood and his desire to earn the respect of his peers. Of course, like many footballers, many are raised in normal working class neighbourhoods, and many had to go through many trials and tribulations to get to where they are. That is a true beauty of football, where it is a pure meritocracy, where it doesn't matter who you are or what your upbringing is, and you don't really need to be raised with wealth to really get a chance. If you are good enough, then an academy or a scout will find you and you will get that opportunity. It's very rare that you won't. A quite heartbreaking story about Lukaku is that he pretended to watch games of football on his TV growing up, especially Champions League games, to fit in with the crowd, because his family were too poor to even have television, so he pretended to watch the games. And this is what frustrates me, because clearly he's not got much more else to prove. He scored 85 goals for his country. He's not far behind the most goals scored in European history for his national team. And he's got an incredible record in not only the Premier League, but also the Serie A. So what more does he really have to prove? And I guess this is the frustration which I can understand people saying. Even though he has already got many records, it still feels like there's still much more to get out of him, which maybe that's not his fault, and that is simply our fault for expecting too much of him. Lukaku in his last 2 European finals has runners-up medals, having to play a central role in both finals. In August 2020, he scored a goal and then an own goal for Inter against Sevilla in a 3-2 defeat. 2 years later, Man City beat Inter Milan, and he came off the bench and had a close-range header saved by Ederson in the 89th minute in the Champions League final, even getting in the way of another opportunity late on in the game. He also has gained a reputation because of all the records for being somewhat of a quote-unquote stat padder and being great against the smaller teams, but in the big games he seems to get lost a bit. And this is where we end up to now. Belgium beat France, and now is the moment for Lukaku to show that he's more than just a stat padder or a player which shines in the smaller games. This is now his moment. He has to take advantage of this moment, and Euro 2024 offers him a chance to correct and secure his legacy. He's got incredible willpower. I've listened to many of his interviews, and his Players Tribune in 2018 was also very heartfelt. Absolutely, and that's kind of why I want him to succeed so much more, because despite his times at United or Chelsea, they're both seen as obvious failures, which I think is harsh, but also something that he does need to own. He's now got the opportunity to amend himself for the missed mistakes against Croatia back in 2020 World Cup, or even what's happened so far in this Euro. And I really hope for his sake that he can secure his legacy as potentially the greatest Belgian footballer of all time. Maybe beyond Kevin De Bruyne. You tell me down below. Bye.